We go live now to Maryland, where Nigel Farage is taking to the stage. Here we go.
See if I can do your job, Patrick.
Thank you so very much. Reception. It's great to be here, and how amazing it is. You know, 13 years ago, I was the only foreign speaker, and now CPAC is a global brand. Congratulations to Matt and Mercedes Schlapp for making it happen. And what a time it is to cross the pond. My country. You can't say anything, or you might get put in prison. We're getting poorer. Everybody's miserable. We're governed by a left-wing, awful government. Suddenly, post-November the 5th, America is optimistic. It's upbeat. It's the beginning of the golden age in America. And it is all because of one totally extraordinary individual. You know, I can tell you that if you take on the establishment, they do not come out with a tray of drinks. The whole of the British establishment wanted us to be members of the globalist European Union. All the parties, all the big businesses, all the trade unions. And it was almost me alone saying, this is a crazy idea. We want control of our sovereignty, our borders, and our identity back with the British people. And for daring to say that, they made my life hell. But the tough times I went through are as nothing compared to what they put Donald J. Trump through. It went on for year after year after year. Endless court cases, mainstream media abuse, harassment of his family, debanking from some of the worst financial institutions, assassination attempts. And yet this man has come through it braver, stronger, wiser than at any point. He is simply the bravest man that I know, and we should all applaud him. We really should. We really should. And what a pick. What a pick for Vice President. You know, very often, around the world, very often Vice Presidents, American Vice Presidents, are not particularly noticed, not taken that seriously. But after the speech at the Munich Security Conference, I think we can say with some confidence that the American VP is going to be a major part of global politics. And I loved it. I loved it. Did you enjoy his speech? Well, I tell you what, they didn't, did they? They absolutely hated it. It rather reminded me of my times in the European Parliament a decade ago, getting up saying the bloke had the charisma of a damp rag, and that rather upset them. But JD was right to have allowed millions of undocumented young males to come into Europe, many from war zones in which they took an active part, to allow those people who come in, and in many cases come from cultures and countries where women are not even treated as second-class citizens, to have seen the massive increases in crime, gang crime, dramatic increases in sexual crime against women, and yet nobody in the European establishment is prepared to put their hands up to recognise the depth of the problem and to say sorry to their people. And JD called them out in this speech, and he was right. He was right. He also mentioned free speech. And I think there's a third figure in American public life now that is, well, I think he's a hero. Because if you remember 2020, in November, you couldn't say anything about the conduct of the election in this country. You then couldn't say anything about vaccines or about lockdowns without social media closing you down. And then along came the hero of free speech, Elon Musk. fantastic, and he's fighting for free speech. And boy, if we don't have free speech, we're not living in a free, open, democratic society. It matters that much. And I think I believe that the talents of the world's most successful businessman going into this amazing Doge project, I wish him all the luck in the world and Godspeed. I really, really do. And we very often follow you. American trends we tend to follow. You occasionally follow some of our trends. I mean, you gave us woke. And we gave you Prince Harry. No, you keep him, you keep him. But in 2016, we delivered a political thunderbolt across the whole world, and it was called Brexit. And I believe that a wave crossed the Atlantic and helped Donald Trump win the presidency in November 2016. Well, this time, the Trump win has the ability not just to save your country, not just to make you freer and more prosperous than America has ever been, because undoubtedly that is what is going to happen. But it's also producing a wave that is now coming the other way, across the Atlantic. I had been retired from politics for nearly 4 years, but I decided last June I'd get back into politics because I couldn't bear what was happening in my country. And I am now leading, and in historical terms this is incredible, I am now leading Reform UK, and we are now topping every opinion poll in Britain. And we are going to win the next general election and save our country. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And what you guys have done, what CPAC, what the activists have done in helping President Trump win 85% of the counties in this great country of yours, to win the House, the Senate, the majority vote, all those things you've done, the confidence of this man, surrounded by a great team, this is all going to blow back and help us in our endeavours and across the rest of Europe too. And I really believe that, like you, British taxpayers have had enough of sending £100,000 to Bangladesh to study shrimp behaviour. But we've had enough of free speech being cracked down upon. We've had enough of two-tier policing, two-tier justice, different groups of people being treated differently by the law. We've had enough of being told, you can't say that. The hell with it. Within the limits of what free speech gives us, we should be allowed to say whatever the hell we want. And we will. And we will. We will deport those who come into Britain by dinghy illegally. We will make sure that those to come to Britain legally subscribe to our shared values. In fact, in many ways, what we're fighting for is a very similar agenda to the one that you've just fought for and the one that you have just succeeded with. I want to finish by saying, as a regular at CPAC and as somebody who has publicly supported President Trump and been a friend of his for a decade, this is a remarkable CPAC coming together. This is something to celebrate in style, to be proud of. You're going to make America great again, and we in turn will make Britain great again. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've seen John Britain.
OK, so Nigel Farage there speaking at CPAC. Let me just summarise what you have just heard. He said that when Brexit happened, it sent a wave across the Atlantic, and that then made it more likely for Trump to win. He said that now Trump's win has sent a wave back across the Atlantic, sent it to Britain, and he thinks that that will now lead to a victory for reform. He used this phrase, "I will win the next election and I will save Britain." He went in very, very hard on illegal immigration. He went in very hard on free speech. He went in very hard on what he said was two-tier justice. And he also mentioned as well things like DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, the fact that we are sending money abroad by the billions to things like Bangladeshi shrimp farming or green policies in Nepal, despite the fact it's one of the most remote rural countries in the world. So let's just reintroduce my wonderful panel here. Former Tory MP Anna Firth, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. And I'll go to you first on this. Do you think that he's right to say that free speech is under threat in Britain?
Oh, absolutely. And we've had plenty of examples of that, and we've discussed that many times, particularly in the summer with Keir Starmer saying that he expected to see rioters put behind bars. Now, proper rioters, absolutely no problem about that. But people who are expressing their points of view on Facebook, that is free speech. We might not like it, but that is free speech.
Well, Matthew, two things roll into one here. There's the free speech issue and there's the perception of two-tier justice. Do you think that either of those two things are true, that there's a risk of free speech under Keir Starmer and that there is two-tier justice?
No, absolutely not on both of them. I don't think there's a risk of free speech. Nobody went to prison for expressing a view. People went to prison for inciting people to riot, which, I'm not in favour of, and I thought Conservatives who believed in law and order were against that as well. I have to say, Nigel needs to be careful. Donald Trump has gone absolutely crazy over the last few days, and even Nigel's had to criticise him today. He needs to be careful that he spends a bit more time in Clacton and a bit less time hanging out, presumably getting paid to appear at glossy American political rallies. Whatever you think of him, and he is doing well at the moment, he needs to get that balance right. And if I was advising him, I'd tell him that he'd be better back on the pier, which he seemed to be for the election and hasn't been seen much since.
One thing I will say about just on the free speech issue is we did interview the lawyer for a chap on this show as a former Royal Marine who pleaded not guilty to, and that was an overtly free speech issue because he was out there talking. He did a Facebook video. I do wonder how many of the people...
The Welsh guy, he got off there, didn't he?
Yeah, he got off.
But,
but basically everyone else just pleaded guilty because they were told. So it's difficult to ever know, isn't it, really? How did these people go to prison for free speech issues?
He should never have spent 17 days in prison, that man.
No, and whatever we say about it now, the perception across the Atlantic is, as JD Vance is going to raise with Keir Starmer next week, that we have a free speech issue right here in Britain. Sean, I'll move it on to you because another key point there that Nigel was making was about illegal immigration. He said it's made us less safe, it's increased terror attacks. I think he said it definitely went off on sexual crimes as well. So he set his stall out there and saying this is happening, he's going to sort it. Your views?
I think I've mixed both of them into one, the free speech thing as well. It's almost irrelevant what's happening in America around free speech, etc. If you're here, I said in Clacton or the Scunthorpe or something, the most important thing is how we perceive it here. And it was perceived that free speech was under attack. That's how people see it. People see it that if you happen to have a view that's centre-right or towards the right, you have to answer different questions under the law. I mean, we saw Labour Labour councillors encouraging people to report people, and that led to a whole big furore.
And he was prosecuted, that guy.
And that's right, and he should be. But the point,
yeah, absolutely.
But the point is, there is a perception, a very real perception, that you have to answer a different set of questions if you're on the right. Okay. So I think it's important things going here. The other thing I'd say about Nigel, where he may have pitched it correctly, a lot of the problems that people are having with Trump now comes from the utter disrespect he's been treated with by some of our parliamentarians and our entire media system. In America, he is the president, and they treat him like Trump. And I think a lot of his behaviour and the respect he's getting from Americans is because everybody else has treated him so badly, and Americans have taken that to heart.
Well, he called himself the king yesterday, and he needs to remember that the whole of his country is formed on the basis of not having a monarch. Many of us think that's a good idea generally, but I don't think we need King Trump any more than we need King anybody else in the States.
You're a Republican in that sense?
Yeah, I'm leaning that way, but...
Gosh, OK. Let me just mention the other thing about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So Nigel was basically praising the fact that in America at the moment, as everyone watching and listening to this show will be aware, they've gone on a mission to see where US taxpayers' dollars have been spent and have been sent. And shock horror, it's turned out it's been absolutely appalling. I mean, some of it went to Rory Stewart's wife, which I imagine means some of it went to Rory Stewart as well, because it was his charity, and then she miraculously became the CEO of it. But anyway, Turquoise Mountain doing vital work like teaching Afghan women how to weave. But anyway, so over here now, Nigel Farage is saying we need to do that here. Do you think he's right?
Oh, I think that is an absolutely inspired idea. I think we do need that over here. I think the state has grown, far too big. It's basically unsustainable in its current state. We have got to start reining back on things. And we just while we were listening to Nigel there, I was just working out if we were to give back the foreign aid budget to every taxpayer, that would be a net dividend per household in the UK of £1,000 every year. Not just 1 year, every single year. And that would probably be increasing. So that's just one example. Of course we need to do this. It's common sense.
I thought, just while we're talking about this, what I thought I'd do is I'd go on, because there are a few fantastic Twitter pages or X pages run by a variety of different people. I will give a shout out to the procurement files. I'll also give a shout out to Woke Waste, which is run by Charlotte Gill. I just thought, whilst we were talking about that, I'll just see what the latest is on these Twitter pages, right? So you, the taxpayer, spent, that is £1.7 billion on chauffeurs for mayors around the country. £1.7 billion.
Can't be billion.
Yeah,
No.
1.7.
Most of them have got rid of them.
On chauffeurs for
But
mayors.
that will
27 separate contracts on the government database.
1.7 billion.
Yes.
But that will be paid for by local taxpayers, though. That's going to be part of your local council tax.
No, you don't need to split that here, because all tax is paid by us, so you don't need to split that here. Here's the important thing here about Doge. What Doge has done, people on the left here should embrace Doge, because the way we spend our foreign dollars, us and probably America, was how we felt after the Second World War. And we supported a lot of things that were relevant then. If I was Keir Starmer now, I'd say, yeah, quite happily we'd have a look at what we spend it on, and I change some things and some things I keep. But if you don't do that, more and more outrage will be generated. The kind of things that Charlotte Gill is digging out are infuriating. And if the government said they're going to deal with them, they get a different hearing to if they pretend it doesn't exist.
Very quickly, Matthew, because I want to get to my next guest on this, but your views on...
Look, I mean, I think government efficiency is great, and that's why Rachel Reeves is actually said that we need to justify every taxpayer pound that's spent. The chaos you're seeing in the States, where last week they sacked all the people who look after the nuclear weapons stockpile, saving on the budget. Probably want somebody looking after those nuclear weapons, don't we?
All right.
Military should do it.
OK. So, I'm going to just forward this on. Thank you to my wonderful panel. I think stay where you are.